I never thought I would get married. If I'm being honest, I never really had the desire to get married. In fact, for much of my life, I thought I was going to be a priest. I spent 3.5 years in seminary, and it was an amazing time of discernment and transformation for me. But God had other plans. God wasn't calling me in that direction. That's what discernment is all about, after all, figuring out what God wants for my life. It turned out He needed me somewhere else. I did still know one thing, though. I definitely was not going to get married. Well, God had other plans again. I'm happily married. This woman named Teresa came along, and suddenly I discerned my true vocation to marriage. And when I proposed, I got down on one knee, the way most men do. Why is it one knee? I don't know. That's just what you're supposed to do, right? It's tradition, after all. It shows you're serious about this thing, and you're going to do it right. You're placing yourself at the feet of the woman you love, telling her you're willing to give your whole life for her, and you're asking her the question only she can answer. Will you accept my love for you? I'm John Leonetti, and you might be wondering whether you're listening to the wrong thing right about now. Aren't we supposed to be talking about the Stations of the Cross, you may ask? Why am I telling you the story of how I proposed to my wife? You'll see the connection soon. When we think of Jesus on His way to His execution, it's sad and it's horrible, but it's also a love story. In fact, it's the greatest love story ever told. The third station of the cross, Jesus falls the first time. If you were with me the last time for the first two stations, you're not surprised that Jesus stumbled. He was in terrible shape. He was still bleeding from the tortures they'd put Him through before He picked up the cross. And the cross itself, that was probably made of olive wood, just about the heaviest kind of wood that you could possibly carry. Once again, we have to remind ourselves of the mystery of the Incarnation. Jesus was fully God, but He was also fully human. He felt every bit of pain you or I would feel in the same situation. His body got worn out by the trauma, and the effort of carrying the heavy weight on His shoulders, it was almost unbearable. Think of the love it took to take up that burden. He had every chance in the world to get out from under it. He didn't have to come to Jerusalem. He didn't have to wait in the garden when the soldiers were coming for him. He could have said something, anything to Pontius Pilate that might have changed the governor's mind. But He picked up that cross because He loves us. And that's what love is. As St. Thomas Aquinas explained it, to love is to will the good of the other as other. That means I want what's best for you because and only because it's what's best for you, not because it fulfills some need or desire of mine. That's an important distinction. When we think of love stories, we probably think of TV shows or movies or romance novels. Some of those are very sweet, but really, when you come right down to it, most of them aren't about the kind of love we're talking about here. Many times they're stories about finding that special someone and getting what you want from her or him. But real love isn't about what I want. Or maybe I should say, real love is about reorienting what I want until the only thing that I want is what's good for you. God is love, as St. John told us in his first letter, and that's the only possible reason why God the Son went through suffering and death. God doesn't need anything from us. What could we give the God who has everything? He just loves us, and that means He wants what's good for us. So He sent His Son, as St. Paul says in the 2nd chapter of his letter to the Philippians, who, though He was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, He emptied Himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness, and found human in appearance, He humbled Himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. That's why I say this is the greatest love story ever told. Now, here, as He's about to save the world, He falls. I've always imagined it as falling to His knee, just like I did when I proposed to my wife. Once I made that connection, I couldn't let it go. Is this a proposal from Jesus to us? Is He saying to us, will you carry your cross with me? Will you accept my love for you? And the really important question, what will our answer be? The fourth station of the cross, Jesus meets His mother. We've had a little moment alone with Jesus to contemplate His love for us in particular. But now let's pull back again and take in the whole scene. It's loud, it's ugly. Crowds of people line the narrow streets, shouting and screaming, throwing things, laughing at the criminals as they stumble off to die. That's what they're here for. Every space along the street is taken up with jeering faces. People climb up on roofs with rotten tomatoes to toss down on the heads of the condemned. Some of them are there because they're just bullies. Some of them are caught up in the festival atmosphere, like it's a party. And I'll bet a lot of them, basically decent people, who are afraid that if they didn't join in the jeering, people will start to think they're Jesus freaks themselves. But there's one face in the crowd that isn't twisted into a hateful grimace. And somewhere along the way, Jesus sees that face, the face of his mother. Think of the pain Jesus is enduring, and think of the pain his mother is enduring. But he didn't run from that pain, and she doesn't run from that pain either. She embraces it. She stands with her son now, and she'll stand with him at the foot of the cross. Did she remember what Simeon had told her more than 30 years earlier when she brought her baby Jesus to the temple? Were those words echoing in her head? And you yourself a sword will pierce? But she was there. She couldn't stop the execution. She couldn't take away the pain, but she could be there. And as a mother, she had to know that just seeing her face would bring Jesus consolation. Think about that. God finds consolation in his creatures. Why didn't Mary do all she could to stop Jesus from going through with this? I can only think of one reason. She loves us too. She knew from the beginning that her son would be something great in the world, but she also knew that he would bring her great sorrow. She'd been there for his first miracle, turning water into wine. She was the one who asked him to do it to save the wedding banquet. He told her and his disciples what was ahead for him. But it seems as though Mary was the only one who really understood. So when we see Mary here along the sorrowful way, waiting for her son to come by with his cross, waiting to follow him to Golgotha, we have to remember that we're her children too. When I look at these two stations of the cross, it strikes me that they kind of go together. The son falls, mom is there, and she's there for us too. I think back to that wedding banquet in the 2nd chapter of John's Gospel. What was it she told the people there? Do whatever he tells you. And they did, and everything turned out all right. Mary always directs us to Jesus. In all her joys, in all her sufferings, her face is always turned toward her son. And in all of our joys and sufferings, our mother models for us where our faces need to be oriented as well. So when we meditate on these two stations, we should try to remember what love really is. We should remember that Jesus wants only what's best for us. That's why he was willing to go through the kind of torture and death that he did. He shows us what perfect love is like, and he saves us by that perfect love. Mary knew that, and she wants that for us. See, Mary didn't shrink from the worst torture a mother could endure. She embraced it, knowing that what would come of it would indeed bring life to the world.